Hi, I just want to share some of my findings from doing the Leadership Academy action plan through this year. Both the positives and some things that are definitely some grows to make sure that I'm able to carry this work on from year to year and make it more meaningful as we go. So I'm just kind of going to go through each chapter and kind of share some of the findings that I have and some evidence. So just get ready. So the first chapter was scheduling of performances outside of school. That was something where I felt like we were really successful. We got to sing at the PPG Winter Garden with my 5, 6, and 7, 8 show choirs. We got to perform at Kennywood Holiday Lights, which went really well with both those show choirs as well. One new thing that I started this year was singing Valentine's. So both the 7, 8, and 5, 6 show choir got to leave the school each for a day and go out and perform. So we got to perform at people's work, in their home, in their backyard. So whoever requested us, we kind of just showed up in their classroom and again at some of those works. And so it was really exciting and meaningful, I think, for my students especially, to kind of take from this bigger idea of performing from these large spaces and move it down to a more intimate setting where it was just a few people, or in some cases just one person, who got to really experience the power of music. And I think that sharing was really important for them and made for a lot of meaningful connections. So that was something that I just really, really enjoyed for them being able to do. Thinking about unit planning, which is kind of like the creme de la creme, or the thing I enjoyed doing the most. I kind of went through 3 different revisions specifically in terms of one of my classes, which was my piano class. So I really wanted the students to be able to see within themselves their work and kind of be able to have that personal experience of getting excited and getting engaged to the content. So the first thing that we talked about when I took that piano class was they had a choice between which method book they wanted to start in, which was fine, but it wasn't really that motivating for them. Didn't really make them that engaged, and they kind of went through the motions of what they had to do. So instead, for the second trimester, I went through and I took each of our 6 big ideas through our curriculum, and they could work in 6 different big idea projects, which was exciting, with the exception of the idea that some of those big idea projects, depending on where you start, either there's too many skills to learn in order to be able to complete it in 2 weeks, which is when I used in my checkups, or there would be not enough time to be able to really put quality into their work in terms of a summative aspect. So I found that wasn't as engaging for them, but it was more on the right track. So for their final trimester, what I did was instead I let them choose which songs that they wanted to start with, and we kind of worked on it and worked through a process of them being able to find their own music and be able to explore. So I have 3 examples. The first being that this is a student who chose something very simple in terms of execution. All the notes are written in for them. They just kind of had to go through and play it. But something very simple in terms of her ability level. For moving to her second song, she weaned onto something a little bit more difficult, where she still had the notes written in, but now we're working on trying to integrate 2 hands in there and making it more effective for her. And then that led us to our final go-around, where now we're working again on notating our music on our own. But again, these were all songs that she got to pick out. And you'd find that there were some students who it would be more difficult for them to get through a song, and so I let them carry over. This was more about the progress, less about the amount of completion of songs. So they did have a self-reflection rubric that they filled out, and it was kind of nice just to see them go through that process. And one thing that helped streamline that class was that all the learning targets were the same. In terms of things that every pianist would want to know. So how to develop a practice schedule, how to be able to critique a song, how to have that aesthetic response to a song, how to collaborate with others in order to advance your knowledge and learning. And so these were all things I thought were really beneficial for them. And then thinking about my younger grades, just going through and making sure that I assessed them on their exit tickets as we went every day. And so this was just a tracker that I made up for them. So you can see some of those learning targets assessed depending on the unit, and then looking at where they were in terms of meeting those standards. And then from there, I got to create small groups that I used in my classes and that were kind of tailored towards the needs of my students and where they were at depending on the unit and the standard that they were covering. And so that was just really important for me to be able to go through that work and kind of make it be meaningful for them. I found that one thing I want to do for next year is just make sure that I'm giving more choice to my younger students, just like I did for my middle school students, in terms of them kind of having that ownership over what they want to learn, and just making sure I'm tailoring it to them so that every musician is kind of feeling they're growing in their own pace and their own time, with just like a set of learning targets overarching that we need to hit as we go through. Thinking through the chapter 3, which is collaborative work, one thing that I know was difficult was just moving to a new school and then trying to collaborate with somebody from a different school at the same time, only because as I was revising the units I was working on to meet the needs of my students, I was thinking at the same time it wouldn't be quality to send those units out to another teacher to kind of work through that same plan and try and check on the quality of those units and whether they were valid or not in terms of assessment. And so one thing that we did as an arts team that I thought was really powerful was that we collaborated on creating a behavior report card that we use for our middle school students. And so you can see over on this black section would be the names of all those students. But you can see there for this one core value that we've aligned, we have 5 behavior targets. And then every color represents a different arts teacher that's assessed that behavior target. And we assessed them off of the kids that we had in our classes at that time. Those students would get a summative score, and those summative scores are released every 6 and every 12 weeks of the trimester. So those summative scores go out of a score 4, so obviously like a 3.5 would be higher than 2.75. And so I found that to be really beneficial. I think our team found it really beneficial just so we're all speaking common language. I know one thing that we want to do to improve that for next year is just making sure that we are moving into a space where we can try and make it all digital so we don't have to handwrite any of those behavior scores. So that's just something that I think will be really beneficial as we move. Chapter 4, which is scheduling performers to come into the school, was another area of difficulty in terms of just being able to find the community resources to come in and perform or have that open dialogue with our students. And so one thing that I know Melanie and I have discussed starting in the 1920 school year is having an arts booster program or an arts advocacy group that is kind of put together by our parents. And so we have this open dialogue where we can kind of talk to our parents about things that we need. They can kind of share back things that they want to see happening, but also using them as a networking tool to be able to say, hey, we are looking for performers to be able to come in and talk with our students and have that kind of open dialogue, share information, teach them something, help them with their learning. And so that is something that I'm really excited about to look forward to accomplishing in the 1920 school year, only because I really want to make sure that our students are receiving a quality experience in terms of arts. But that's something that I think our team will definitely collaborate on as we move forward in our progression as a team. When we're thinking about student peer knowledge bank, which was something where all students could kind of add on a song and kind of have an exploration of those musical exemplars, I really want to start small and purposeful with that. And so one thing that I did with our show choir is after the first 2 trimesters, it was for trimester 3, I let them pick out their spring repertoire for their concert. So the way I went through that process was just first letting them throw in any song that they thought they might want to perform into a sheet. So this had 27 different song varieties, and they varied depending on any student's interest. So any student could have any songs. Obviously, there was some repeats in there, but we had 27 options, and then 24 respondents. And then you can see that the data kind of lays out where we are in terms of popularity. So we went through that process. We did about 3 rounds until we came to a top 5, and those were the 5 songs that we worked on for the trimester in terms of getting them performance ready. I can say with certainty that the Hamilton medley was something that we did perform in 7/8 show choir specifically, and that ended up being really popular, got a lot of good feedback. But I think a lot of that process was just making sure that students were able to have that say and that voice, what they wanted to learn. And so really making sure that was guided to them so that they weren't just picking anything. But as we continue and as the group grows and we have that turnover of kids over and over, or that carryover instead of turnover, of kids over and over, they'll be smarter about the repertoire they're picking, and we'll be able to keep building quality performances where they have an authentic voice in what they're performing. Additionally, a lot of students were able to collaborate in terms of cafe concerts, which was a concert that students could go and perform at during lunchtime for other students. And so that was really exciting just to have them kind of share those ideas and their songs with each other to be able to then go perform them in an intimate space for their peers. So finally, thinking about Chapter 6, which was reflection, I did a lot of notebooking this year, a lot of looking at unit plans I'd written from past years and just kind of reworking the whole thing to make sure it fit our students. Still had a lot of support through my principal and our arts coach, but always could use more feedback and more guidance in terms of making sure that I'm really implementing a culture responsive environment. I think one thing about moving to our new building is that the student population is very much 50% white, 50% black, and you don't have a school that's makeup is always like that. So I'm really looking forward to striking while the iron's hot and really, trying to make sure that as much in this building there's a predominant white voice scene in musical excellence, that we are really working hard to examine all different types of music, but specifically making sure that we bring things like beatbox and hip hop and soul and funk and R&B into the classroom, because they are valuable and they're important and they matter and they have a voice, especially for our Black students in the school where they don't always see themselves. It's really important for them to see themselves in the music that they're studying. So that's something I definitely want to carry through and keep moving forward as we move into the 1920 school year and as we push through making this action plan come alive for following years. Thank you.